and welcome to the Hometown Church Podcast. I am your host, Jesse Roskamp. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Today, we are continuing our 40 days of transformation. In fact, we have officially crossed the halfway mark in this 40 days. I can't believe how fast it has been going by. It's been such a blessing to go through this as an entire church. If you're somehow new and haven't heard about what's been going on so far, if this is the first thing you've clicked on in the 40 days, our 40 days series is something that we do every year as a church where we pick one topic in relation to our faith and we zero in on it as a church and really just kind of dive into it all together. And so this year, our topic is transformation, where we're learning to live and love more like Jesus, right? Being transformed more and more into his image as we follow him. So it's been a great series so far. We kicked it off in week 1 by talking about what it means to go from believing this stuff to now feeling like we belong and a part of this community. In week 2, we talked about going from consuming, being consumers of the church, really just taking everything in, to now becoming contributors, right? Learning to serve the church. In week 3, Pastor Deacon, he talked all about what it means to go from obedience, from knowledge to obedience, right? Taking the stuff that we have learned and know about Jesus to now putting it into practice. And so this last Sunday, Pastor Spencer, he shared the next part of this series, which was going from self-focused to others-focused. And I think this is a really important aspect of our faith, because really when we take a look at especially a lot of the commands and a lot of the behaviors and attitudes that we're supposed to have as followers of Jesus, a lot of them are related to how we interact with people, right? So a big component of our faith is taking the focus off of ourselves and now putting it on other people. And so today, as we've done throughout this series, we've got a great lineup of guests who are all going to share little stories and thoughts and reflections as it relates to this week's topic. And on today's show, you're going to hear from 5 guests. We'll start with Pastor Spencer as he shares a few extra thoughts from the sermon. We'll then hear from Pastor Tim Weber, who is our Bloomington campus pastor, followed by Joel Fredericks, who's another lay pastor here at our church. We'll hear from Kate Diley, who's one of the deacons here at our church. And then we'll finish it up with Micah Metzger, one of the young adults from our Bloomington campus. And they've all done a wonderful job of just compiling their thoughts and putting it together for you here. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear from all of them. I've already got to hear all their stories, and they did just a marvelous job. So with that, we'll kick it off here with Pastor Spencer.
Hi, my name is Spencer Bernard, and I am the lead teaching pastor here at Hometown Church, and my wife and I have been attending since 1990. And when I first came here, I didn't even know the Lord, but my spiritual growth, my transformation journey has happened right here at Hometown. And I have a question that I'd like to ask you today. And my question is this: Have you heard of Mousetrap? I mean, the game, Mousetrap, the game. I used to love playing this as a kid. It's a game where you piece together this sort of old school, elaborate, homemade, ridiculously complex mousetrap. And it's a lot of fun to put together, and it's a lot of fun to do with kids. So we bought a new copy of that game with the idea of playing with our grandkids. Well, last week, the grandkids were over, and Lisa suggested to me, why don't we get Mousetrap out and you can play with the grandkids? Now, initially, I resisted, even though buying the game was my idea. Initially, I'm like, ugh, because putting together the Mousetrap is like hard. It's frustrating, it's hard. I mean, it's not like seriously hard, but it's just hard enough to bug you, you know? And I didn't remember how it went. I'd have to kind of relearn. Anyway, I didn't want to do it originally, but that's the reason we got the game. So, okay, yeah, let's play Mousetrap. So we get the box, and we get all the pieces out, and right away, you know, we're missing a rubber band. We need a rubber band for this thing, and we had to find one in the house, so there's that. And then I get the board out, and by the way, no one actually plays the game Mousetrap. what you do is you just put it together and play with the contraption. I'm trying to put it together, and I'm trying to read the instruction. I hate reading instructions. And so I'm getting kind of, focused in and a little stressed out. And you know how stuff sort of fits together, but not perfectly. And, you're wondering, do I have this, or all this stuff. And I'm finally starting to make a little bit of progress getting the mousetrap together. And Lisa gives me a nudge. And she says, don't forget to include them. And I look over, and two of my grandkids are sitting there with not a lot to do. And I'm just going to make a confession here. My first thought was, if I include them in building the mousetrap, it'll only slow me down. But I have had enough years behind me and experience to know that that's not a good thought. So I thought, okay, yeah, you're right. I got to include them. That's the whole point here. So I slowed down the process, and I kind of set things up for them to help. And we built the mousetrap together. And it took a while, but we finally got together. And then you kind of do a little thing, and a metal ball rolls, and it goes. It's this whole cool thing. If you don't have a mousetrap, you got to get it. It's a lot of fun, especially if you have kids. And when we finally got this thing together and it worked, it was quite a nice little victory. And we celebrated together. Now, had I gone along with my original plan of doing it alone, it would have got done quicker, but it would have been just like my little victory. But a shared victory is more than twice the victory. It greatly magnifies the experience, and really the joy, including them instead of my own agenda, but rather thinking, how can I make this fun for them? That magnified the joy. Now, there's a verse I want to read to you, and this is in the sermon the other day, but it's just, I love this passage because I never noticed this connection before. This is new for me, and this is Philippians chapter 2, verse 17 and 18. And Paul, the Apostle Paul, the writer, he says this, but I will rejoice even if I lose my life pouring it out like a liquid offering to God, just like your faithful service is an offering to God. Now, notice he's talking about serving the Lord and serving others, because that's an expression of serving God, is serving others, and a pouring out, not a saving up of our lives, but a giving away, a pouring out of our lives. Let's see. But I will rejoice even if I lose my life, pouring it out like a liquid offering to God, just like your faithful service is an offering to God. And I want all of you to share that joy. Yes, you should rejoice, and I will share your joy. What's so cool there is Paul is connecting service, pouring out your life in a sacrificial way. And by the way, sacrificial, that means stuff, when we serve other people, it can be a hassle, it can be frustrating, it can not go well. It's a sacrifice. It costs us. And he's connecting that sacrificial service to joy. And I think the lesson here is when we take ourselves off of center stage and put our Lord at center stage and express that by putting others at center stage, there's a blessing there for us. So here's my advice to you. Whatever mousetrap you're working on, whatever it is you're endeavoring to do, just check yourself a little bit and take yourself off of center stage and make sure your motive and your heart is for the Lord and for other people, because that's how you experience the blessing.
Hey, Hometown. My name is Tim Weber. I have been with Hometown Church for about 37 years. I'm at the Bloomington campus, the campus pastor here. And my journey from being self-focused to others-focused began when I was about 15 years old. That's when I gave my life to Christ through a Youth for Christ conference in Loveland, Colorado. And it couldn't have happened at a better time, because at that time my life and my family were pretty much falling apart. And Christ offered a renewed hope that I really desperately needed at that time. I was going to a Catholic church in Blue Earth, and I was at that church for about 3 years before I left for college. And this isn't a knock on Catholic churches at all. I just heard very, very little about living my life for other people at that time. So anyway, I left Blue Earth, went to college, met my wife Britta, and eventually found this church called Evergreen. And I'll tell you, it was like unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It's the first time I'd ever heard the term evangelical, first time I'd ever heard about this Great Commission thing. It was extremely others-oriented, and this church genuinely loved each other and cared about people outside the church. And I was really drawn to what was happening because it tapped into this inner longing that I had for significance and purpose in my life. So my wife and I jumped in with both feet. We started leading small groups. We led multiple ministries. We did this thing called Serve Fest. We were doing kindness projects all over the city of Bloomington. And at that time, Evergreen was also a church in a box. We rented from a school. Can you imagine that? Yeah, we did that for a long time. It was a ton of work. We had to set up, get to church an hour and a half, 2 hours before to set up, and about an hour or so afterwards to tear down. But after several years of serving, I started to get burned out. And what I began to realize was that my motivation to love and serve other people was pretty messed up. It was way more self-focused than I realized. I served because it made me feel good. I wanted to be recognized by others, and it was burning me out. And it was at this point that real transformation began to happen in my life, from being self-focused to other focus. This is when it began. And to be very clear, I have not arrived. It's a journey that continues today, and I continue to battle selfishness in my flesh. It's there. But this is where it started. I remember first hearing, the first time ever hearing the Great Command, when Jesus was pressed by the Pharisees about what the greatest command in the entire law of Moses was, and Jesus' response was simple. He just said, love. He said, first and foremost, love God more than anything else. Love him with all your heart, soul, mind. And then he went on to say the second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. Both super important commands. And I'd heard them many, many times at Evergreen. But it wasn't until I heard the next verse that really got to the core of my motivation. It says, all the law and all the demands of the prophets are based on or depend on these two commands. So here's what it meant for me. It meant that, Tim, as long as you just try to serve and not put first things first and love God with everything you have, all these other commands that God gives you in your life, they're going to feel like a massive weight, and they're going to be hard and difficult. But if you put first things first and you love God first, and you just put all your focus and energy there, all of these commands God gives to you are actually going to be a joy. So that began my journey of falling in love with God. And the starting place of understanding God's love for me was understanding his love. Well, for loving God is still understanding his love for me. 1 John 4:19 tells us that we love because he first loved us. So this verse confirms that any human love, particular love that we have for God and for other people, it's not a self-generated thing. It's a response to this beautiful, divine, unconditional love that God has for us. But even grasping that love on my own power isn't possible. Paul knew this. And it's why he prayed this for the church in Ephesus. He says, and I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of the fullness of God. So I've prayed this many times for my own life, and I've prayed it a lot for the church, and God has been faithful to show me how real and deep his love is for me. And each time he does, the purity of my motivation for him, my love for him, and my love for people grows. So the verse for week 4 of our 48-day journey in Philippians 2 is Philippians 2, verses 1 through 11. And the last 6 or 7 verses of this passage beautifully summarizes everything I've shared up to this point. Here's what it says. You must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. That's a good way to start. Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on the cross. I'm telling you, this is what absolutely gutted me. Not that just that Jesus gave up his divine privileges or that he came to earth and he subjected himself to everything that we're tempted to, or that he lived such a humble and simple life, or even that he died a criminal's death on the cross. What really, really just transformed me is that he did it for me. And that just blows me away. And so when I think about that, listen, if you ever wonder if God loves you, please remember that there is absolutely no greater love than for a man to lay his life down for one another, for another person. And that is exactly what he did for me, and that's exactly what he did for you. And that truth has been at the heart of purifying my motivation for loving God and loving people, and moving from a heart that is very selfish to one that genuinely loves people.
Hi, my name is Joel. I've been at Hometown Bloomington for about 15 years, and I'm excited to be with you this morning. In my 40s, I thought, with aging, that I'd always get better with things spiritually, and I would just kind of progressively grow in my faith and in my maturity. But in my 40s, I feel like I've experienced more discontentment and discouragement and self-pity than I've ever experienced before. And some of that is circumstantial, like things are going bad in my life, but a lot of it just isn't. And it feels like it's just something that's following me around and I can't let go of it. And it's been a difficult journey for me. And some of it is circumstantial. A few weeks ago, for example, my wife was planning a trip for just the two of us to Costa Rica. And she was so excited, and I was excited, and things at my job and my family life were hard, and I was looking forward to this break in life. And we were supposed to fly out on a Sunday morning, but on Friday evening, we're sitting talking with my sister and brother-in-law, and they were flying out the day before us to Costa Rica. And then all of a sudden, my wife goes, "Your passport's expired." And I'm like, "What? You knew this?" And she runs to the office and she grabs it and she looks, and yes, it's 2 years expired. And I'm like feeling like it's my fault, but it's also her fault. And I had to figure out a way to get to Costa Rica by Sunday morning. And yet there was nothing I could do. And we had a non-refundable hotel that was very bougie and expensive. And so my wife flew out Sunday morning without me. And I spent all Monday taking off of work and trying to figure out a way to get my passport at the Minneapolis Passport Agency. And I vacillated between self-pity and anger throughout that day I got pictures of them on the beach, and I'm sitting frigid in a room that's not comfortable. And so it was a frustrating experience. And as I experienced that, I had so much inner turmoil. And yet I know, that was just one experience, but I know that all of us have our own battles and our own things that we're struggling through in this world. This world is not our home. This world, we are strangers and foreigners, and we are promised turmoil and hardship. And that's every single one of us. And as I think about the early church and the church of Philippi that the Apostle Paul was writing to, they had their own problems. They had church division and false teachers and the Roman government oppressing them and all these things that they were dealing with. But right in the midst of that struggle and pain, the Apostle Paul writes this in Philippians 4:8. He says, "Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. And as I think about that, fix your thoughts, my mind goes to other verses like set your mind on things above, or fix your thoughts on Jesus, fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith. And there's like this focus that we're supposed to have on things that are good and lovely and godly and love, and not on ourselves. And so I think about this week moving from from self-focused to other-centered, and it's this walk of maturity in the faith. I know from my own experience, it's more than just maturity that we're after here. I know that self-focus in my own experience leads to misery, discontentment, comparison, all these negative feelings that come with it. But when I truly fix my eyes on something greater, on God and on love, peace and joy follow me. And so it's really more than just a step on the maturity of discipleship that we're on in this 40 days. And I would like to say too, that this self-focus that I experience, I need to call it what it is, and it's pride. It's a pride. And so the answer isn't just to try harder. It's like, I just got to try harder and it will go away. But the answer truly is to notice what it is on a daily, hour by hour basis, to notice that I'm focusing on myself and it's naturally to who I am. And I do it over and over again. But when I notice it, I can turn from it and I can refocus my gaze on what is good and what is lovely, and I can focus on God. And then that perception changes the way my life flows. And this is truly the fight of faith for me. The 2 verses before Philippians 4:8, it says this: don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. And so the fight of faith is to recognize self-pity, to recognize pride, and redirect your thoughts to God. And this is the only path to true peace, to true freedom and joy.
Hi, my name is Kate, and I am learning to be others-focused instead of self-focused. I've had several habits that I think maintained a self-focused lifestyle, and one in particular was the habit of grudge holding. I would get easily offended, and I think that had a lot to do with like my lack of emotional maturity or like lack of emotional health, because I wouldn't process the hurt that I was feeling in a healthy way. I would stew on the thought of like, that person made me feel bad and that person let me down. And then after stewing on thoughts like that, I would land on judgmental or like actually hateful ways of then viewing that person. And then that was pretty much it. Like that grudge became their whole identity to me. And it made it so I really couldn't live out what it says in Philippians 2. So looking at the first 2 verses in Philippians 2, it says, therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, and being one in spirit and of one mind. For the people that I had grudges against, I couldn't do anything that's in those verses. There was no tenderness in my heart. There was no compassion. It made it so I really couldn't walk like in unity with those people. And I really believe that if you'd asked me, I was so deceived that I think I would have told you like, yeah, I'm united with that person because, we're of the same body. But it would have been like the most shallow version of that statement. I could have been put in the same room with someone that I was holding a grudge against. And my heart was so, I was so guarded with them and my heart was so hard toward them that we may as well have been on different planets because all real relationship or connection was totally cut off between me and that person. So grudges were damaging my relationships, and it made it impossible for me to be others focused the way that God asks us to be. Because in the next 2 verses of Philippians, it says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interests of others." I was blinded by my grudges. I could not see someone's interest or like someone's needs. I couldn't even see like their true value because grudges were owning my whole perspective on that person. So we come to 2021, and I remember being at a retreat where I was just wrestling with God about the concept of justice. I really remember feeling like justice isn't anywhere. And looking back on it, I think it probably has something to do with the fact that I was constantly focused on what I thought other people's failures were. But at any rate, during that weekend retreat, I felt strongly convicted that God was asking me, like, do you believe that I am flawed? Do you believe that I can't or won't handle justice in the world? Do you submit to my leadership? And I remember, like, with a lot of gratitude, I remember or think back on that, and I remember feeling like it was starting to break that really hard heart that I had developed. I realized that I had this overinflated view of myself, that like I was the justice keeper. And I realized that I was so self-focused that it distorted my view of God and how to follow him. Yeah, I mean, I thought about other people, but it was mostly to criticize them. And that is not at all how God wants me to view people. And I've since been taught and been learning that God looks at people and he sees them as just precious. He looks at them with this excitement and this eagerness to connect, and that God puts the ultimate value on restoration and redemption. So huge shout out to Kit Guerrier and that Dream Weekend retreat that facilitated that whole breakthrough. But after the retreat, I remember I told a trusted Christian woman that I realized like grudges in my life needed to go. And I was so excited to tell her. And honestly, it was like everything I hoped it would be. Like she was so happy for me and we were both pumped up. Like I was like, they gotta go. She's like, yeah, they gotta go. Like it was all the vibes. Like we were having a great time. And then I remember she looked at me and it was just super sincere. And she was like, yeah, like, do you think you need to apologize to these people? Well, like, okay, Terry Thompson is a very wise woman. So I did end up doing that. I had no desire to, but I did. I did do that. And I wish I could say that I did it perfectly. But what I can say is that going and apologizing to those people, treating them as precious, was a powerful step in changing my heart and changing how I treated people and viewed them. Like God is still in the process of changing me to see others with humility and seeing restoration and redemption as the ultimate goal. It was totally hard and not something I wanted to do at all, but totally worth it because of what it did in changing my really hard heart. And so that was, all that started happening back in 2021. Now we're here in 2026. And actually just a couple weeks ago, one of the women in the small group that my husband and I lead, she was there and she was sharing and just this like very sincere, like she just had this like outpouring where she's like, man, I love coming to this small group because I really feel like I can just come and like be honest and I don't feel judged, but I feel really supported in my pursuit of God and living out my faith. And hearing her say those words as a result of like being in a community with me and others, but being in community with me, I remember sitting there being like, okay, that is because God has changed my hard heart toward other people. And now I get to experience what he intends for us, which is tenderness and compassion between the people who love God and who are following him.
Well, hey guys, I'm Micah Metzger. I've been a part of Hometown. I grew up here actually, so I've been a part of Hometown for a long time. And then I left for, I think like a couple years. I was kind of finding my faith, and I've been back in Hometown for about a year now, a little over. It's been really, really good being back. I've been an active Christian, following Jesus actively for, about 3.5 years now. And it's been the best 3.5 years of my life. The topic I want to talk about today, is Philippians 2:3. So the topic for this week is focusing from inwardly focusing on life to outwardly focusing on life. And it really resonated with me kind of looking into this study, because I am naturally very prideful, and I don't really want to be that way in my life. It's not brought me to good places. So the passage I chose from this week is Philippians 2:3. And it says, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves." A little background on me. I grew up in the church in Hometown, and I was pretty much like involved in every ministry possible. I was at the youth group. I was in the Sunday school. My parents would always bring us to the worship nights. I was very much doing all the right things in church, and a lot of people would, call me the good Christian boy who did all the things that that you're supposed to. The reality is I had no relationship with God at all. It was very much just doing it because I was supposed to, and inwardly, all I cared about was me. I was focused on attention from girls, from popularity, just having a bunch of friends. My entire driving ambition was how people saw me. So I had a God-placed desire for business and success, and I twisted that entirely and positioned it entirely towards me. So the beginning of my middle school and high school years, I just pretty much focused on how to make money, how to be successful, how to have people like me. I watched terrible YouTube videos that would tell me how to basically manipulate people, and I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, but everything I saw, the world was through a lens of me. And so anytime I tried to be loving to people, it was through the lens of what can I receive from them, and how can I basically earn approval from them. And basically it was never outwardly focused. I just didn't care. And I got saved then radically, actually. One of the summer camps, it was 2022. There was a summer camp that I went to, and God just entirely captured my attention. And I actually devoted my life to Jesus, started following him. And to be honest, I expected my walk of faith to just sort itself out. I thought pride would no longer be an issue. I thought I would just naturally care for other people. I thought this passion that Jesus had given me would transform my life 100% instantly. And reality check was that's not how it happened. And that's not how it happens most of the time. The first year of following Jesus, I had a ton of zeal. I had a ton of passion for him. I was on fire for pursuing him. But the reality is I didn't actually care about people the way I was supposed to. And flash forward a little bit, about a year, God had called me to Florida. And so I spent a year down there, and about 6 months in, I got dumped by my girlfriend at the time, and it made me kind of push pause on life and check everything, because I was just in a really dark place. And what I realized when I was in that time is a lot of the conversations I was having with my girlfriend at the time about why we broke up and all these things where she felt I didn't love her, didn't show her affection. And I just I was resentful. I was no, that can't be true. There's no way. Everybody always says I'm super loving, but the reality is when I looked into it, is I didn't care about people. And it kind of shattered my world, because I always thought that I was pursuing Jesus with everything I had, and that I was actually reciprocating love and care to other people, but that's just not the case. And so I dove deeply into what Jesus says about loving and what he calls us to. And verses like this in Philippians actually stand out to me so much, because in that time I needed to actually look to what God said. He doesn't say think of other people as equal to you. He says think of them as more significant than yourselves. And it was an active choice that I have to constantly, or it was an active choice to switch my perspective towards other people, but it's still an active choice. Like, it doesn't just happen. And that's why I think it's called the walk of faith, because you're constantly going to be challenged and growing in that area. And so in my life, one of the big things that's changed my perspective is worship. I used to take worship as something that is consumable, something that I would go to and I would praise God, but really it was so that I could feel good and I could cry and like get my emotions out, and just like, it was all for me. So there was good and there was bad worship songs, you know what I mean? Like, it was all towards me. And what shifted my perspective, or when God shifted my perspective, one of the things that I tried doing was I was actively walking in worship for other people and for God. And so now what I challenge myself to do is, in worship, I don't think about other people. You know, I'll try to sit in the back as much as possible so that I'm not paying attention to what other people see. I try to pray to God during the worship. I try to not always just sing the words. I try to intentionally like care for God. And then I try to listen to what he has for me. And sometimes he has me go pray for people. And so I try to basically take the shift off of me and what I can get, and I shift it to what God has for me and what I can give. Because I believe God's given each of us so much purpose and so much abilities and giftings to give to other people. But I think a lot of times, at least me in my own life, I keep that for myself. And so that's been one of the big challenges I've been trying to place in my life, is just caring for other people first. The biggest challenge that I had somebody give me that has honestly speaks so much life into me is, it's a simple phrase. It says, love people who have nothing to give back. And I've been trying to walk with that as much as possible. And I would challenge all of you guys to do the same, not because it's what you're supposed to do, but because it's so much more full. The last encouragement I want to leave with you guys is that life is so much more full when you live it to love God and love people than when you live it to love yourself. So thank you guys.
All right, and that is all we've got for you today. Thank you to our wonderful guests who took the time to come in and record their stories and kind of compile their thoughts for us here. It's such a blessing to hear from so many people in this church and how they're kind of processing all of this stuff. I think for me, it's been really helpful to kind of just cement a lot of these ideas and just hearing how it's affecting other people, not just myself. And for me, you know, this was a big part of my story as well, is just going from being constantly consumed with myself. And it's something I still struggle with quite a bit, is right, constantly thinking about myself and my own circumstances and my own walk with Christ, rather than thinking about and focusing on other people. And I really connected with a lot of what Joel had to say, and Kate and Micah. And really everybody, but those three stories really stood out to me, you know, because for me, for a long time, I could just kind of get bitter and resentful towards people because I was constantly thinking about how things were affecting me instead of how I was affecting other people. And it kind of shocked me as I was going through my walk with Jesus, especially when I thought I was a lot further along than I was, and looking back on it and realizing just how self-centered I have been, and continue to be at times, you know. And thinking back on it, I wanted to share a couple practices that I've put into my life that have really helped me to become more others focused, and has helped me to become more genuinely loving people and taking more of a joy in people, something that doesn't come very naturally to me. And that's two prayer practices that I do every single day. The first is intercessory prayer, which is just a fancy way of saying praying for other people, right? For me, this has been such a big thing in getting my focus off of myself and focusing on the things that are going on in other people's lives. And it's helped me to have a more genuine care for people, especially people that I don't really like that much. I started praying for people that I have grievances with and grudges against and all this kind of stuff. And what I noticed in my heart as I started to do this on a regular basis is that my heart started to change towards these people, and I started to actually genuinely care and love for these people. And I think that's one of the big things I think about with that is why that happens, you know. And it becomes really interesting because every time you see some sort of progress in those people, or you see something good happen to them, the Lord bless them in some certain way, it's kind of a win for you too, right? Because you just got to see God answer one of your prayers. And so it kind of shifts your heart in that way. And I think that's really interesting. The second prayer practice is just gratitude. Right. I end every single day, and I journal all my prayers, which has become a really helpful practice for me. But at the end of my day, I'll always finish it with a prayer of gratitude. And what that is I go through my entire day, every single thing that I did, every single thing that I thought, and I just thank God for all of it. Right. Thank you, God, for the quiet time this morning. Thank you for my walk this morning. Thank you for work. Thank you for helping me get all this other stuff done. And it really helps me to take my focus off of the things that I'm doing and the things that I've done and accomplished, and puts it back to God and gives it back to God as a way of saying, actually, none of this stuff that I did today was on me. It was all on you. And I think those two practices of prayer that I've implemented in my life have really helped me to kind of take the focus off of myself and the things that I'm doing and the things that I'm good at and the praises that I want and all that kind of stuff, and really helps me to start thinking about others and thinking about God along the way. But with that, that's all we've got for you today on this show. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to leave a comment or a like to really help with the engagement of this video, I want this to be kind of a community project where we're all interacting together. You can do that. If you don't feel like it, don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. If you're watching on video, know that we have audio versions of this just about everywhere that you can get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. It's on the app as well, the Hometown Church app if you want to listen on there. And if you're listening on one of those audio platforms, we also do have a video version of this if you want to see all the faces of the people who are talking and kind of get to know them, especially if they go to a different campus than you. That way, when we have our worship night at the very end of this 40 days, you can say hi to them and greet them and say, hey, thank you for sharing your thoughts and thank you for contributing to this. It really helped me if there's something that really connected with you in that way. But for now, that's all we got for you. So I'll leave you with this. Goodbye. Wow.